Is Brent Sadler. And thank you again for the warm hospitality that's been extended from the House of Representatives and the Speaker's office in particular, and of course, Congressman Pittenger. Very much, thank you. Let's see, make sure everyone can hear me. Usually as a Navy man, I'm not accused of having a problem projecting, but if everyone in the back can hear me, I don't see any hands, so that, oh, now I do, so I guess that means you can hear me. So this panel, this discussion is going to be, it's going to be hard to really get at very specifics and definitive answers. So I kind of forewarn you, and the topic is, what is in store for the world on a Trump second term when it comes to trade policies? There are some things that we can discern because this is not his first time as President of the United States, and many actions have already been taken in like the last week and a half. In fact, I thought I would try to prepare and try to have a longer kind of narrative to say what has or what would be coming, and the news just keeps changing. In fact, this morning as I was kind of going through my notes, we had the announcement that Mexico and Canada are deploying 10,000 troops to our north and southern borders. This, of course, was something that President Trump had insisted on, and it was some of the conditions, not all, and we'll get into a little bit about more of what's going on behind these tariffs that are now put on hold for 30 days. So bottom line is the world is an interesting place, and it's changing rapidly. And under the leadership of President Trump and his return to the White House, things are about to get exciting, and I think there's a lot of good news coming for all of us, especially America and its allies and its erstwhile partners like the Philippines. So one of the other things that kind of stay at this point, when I get asked, what can we expect in the Trump administration? I always go back to, well, you already know. Look back at his first term. And so the past is prologue to what we're going to see, not the whole next 4 years, but certainly in the next 100 days, his first 100 days in office. And at this point now, I got to give you the legal caveat, and I'm not going to give you the standard one, but just to say that I don't have any firsthand knowledge or insight as into what specific policies that President Trump is contemplating, what he likely will do. I do have some insights from across those that are close, but again, he has surprised many, and he will continue to surprise many. But there are some founding principles and some strategic objectives that I think it's important to kind of focus in on. And as the guy at the Heritage Foundation, as a senior research fellow for national defense, specifically maritime, I tend to look through the lens of security to include the economics. And this is something that's important to note. The United States, over the last few years, has come to terms with the reality, and I'll talk more about this later in the day, where we have to merge economic statecraft with diplomacy and military statecraft, something that I'll just talk more about called naval statecraft. So the confluence of economics, trade, and military, start looking at those as kind of integrated. And again, the security on the northern and southern borders and the use of tariffs to get to some forward momentum is just the most recent, the current example of this kind of confluence of these two efforts. So what are some of the likely strategic focus areas that we can expect when it comes to trade policy, but also in the understanding of security? The first is, and it was a campaign promise, was security against illegal migration and all of the other ills that come with that. And that we know there are many evils that have been associated with it. One that's the top of the list is the trafficking in narcotics, fentanyl, enabled by the Chinese Communist Party, but under the vehicles of the drug cartels, many of them based in Mexico, but not limited to just Mexico. And those porous borders are an economic as well as a security threat to the United States. The economic piece of it, of course, these are partners with the USMCA and free trade, which I'll get to as another theme we're going to touch on with the security part. So, as already mentioned, Canada and Mexico putting 10,000 soldiers on the border. We'll see how effective that is. That's another kind of theme with President Trump is words are great, but it's the actions that really speak the loudest, and the same would be the way in which the United States will be judging and deciding whether or not those tariffs will go into full force in 30 days. Or somewhere in between. The other is when it comes to the USMCA, this is the free trade with our partners to the north and to the south. The Chinese have actually used this to circumvent previous efforts to sanction them or to go after their unfair trade practices, most notably the dumping of aluminum and the moving of it, trying to get it through third-party countries, which included Mexico. So again, these tariffs and the way that they are applied should be not only the security, but also with China in mind, though it may not seem as obvious. The next, which is another theme I think you're going to see, and again, informing or animating President Trump's trade policies going forward, another campaign promise, and that is the reindustrialization or the improvement of the American workers' lot. But it's really a reindustrialization. I'd say I would not be surprised, and it has been said several times, that one of the top priorities is the maritime industry, shipbuilding, shipping, which of course helps my favorite, the U.S. Navy, in meeting its missions. One of the key points on this is you're going to see a lot of focus in very near term on getting the Ships for America Act revised and approved, and then implemented very quickly. There may even be executive orders to that effect to try to kickstart this very strategically important industry, but also one that is in need of a lot of attention. The other part of this in the reindustrialization is also with the unions and the workers. This relationship is still a little bit tenuous in my estimation. We had a dock workers strike back in the fall. They actually walked out, shut down port traffic. We had a deal early on in January that seemed to kind of put that to a side, but there's a question about how does the United States modernize its ports and its shipping industry. This might come back later, but inside that's an opportunity for partnering and working with countries like the Philippines, a merchant mariner powerhouse in the global stage. Now, the other part on this one with the reindustrialization, of tariffs serve a purpose. They're used as a tool. It's not purely for economics. It's actually for things like security. It's also changing policies, but it's also a third item that's not talked enough about. They also help change the economic environment, shifting the supply chains more favorable to the United States, but more broadly to free and open markets to benefit from that. Friendshoring, in one group will say, onshoring, of course, when it's specifically the United States. So these tariffs, 10% additional on China, the 25% on Canada, and the 25% on Mexico, they also serve the purpose to try to level out and mitigate China's ability to work around the USMCA in this particular iteration. But the tariffs should also be viewed as how to actually adjust the supply chains to be more resilient and less open to coercion or interference by the Chinese Communist Party. Which gets me to the third and the final theme that I think you can see in these trade policies as they come forward, and this new kind of thinking of trade, which is really not that new. As I mentioned, the past is a prologue, and that is a focus to try to improve our supply chains. Shipping serves that. Working through reindustrialization does build in more resiliency to supply chain problems, which we had seen from the Suez Canal when it got shut down, when you had a container ship turned sideways in it, the Houthis and their ongoing attacks against shipping, of course, all the COVID-0 policies in mainland China that completely caused backlogs in many ports in the United States. So it's a very real and felt kind of reality that we live in now, where the United States economy is at risk. And of course, and I think you'll hear more about this later, is rare earth metals is just one example, but not the only one, where the Chinese use their market dominance in order to affect political changes in their adversaries or their partners in the world. But I'll leave that for later discussions, but I'd put that in the back. And the final thing that I would just kind of end on, and I think this goes back to the language that it really was towards the end of Trump's first term, and I would not be surprised if you see a return of that, and that is the understanding and principle of reciprocity. The way that a country treats American economic and people and security interest would be reciprocated in the United States and vice versa. So fairness, said another way, fairness. But reciprocity certainly is something that the Chinese Communist Party would be able to understand in very specific terms. The next one is to be able to outcompete the Chinese. We are in a new Cold War. I think that is a consensus, or fair to say that is a consensus, as some might be very grudgingly come to use that term, but we are in effect in a new Cold War with the Chinese Communist Party. And that will require outcompeting them economically, and this gets into the topic of this panel, but of course also in security and also in the realm of ideas. And the point I want to make, and I keep harping back to, is those things are all conflated. They are all together. They're not separate and independent. And again, the final, in going back to supply chain resiliency, is another theme you're going to see a lot. And it's going to come up, I think, in several different sectors. You're going to see this also with energy and taking a new approach to renewables and also petroleum and the entering of the markets, or as President Trump has said, drill, baby, drill. So with that, I will conclude. Thanks. I look forward to questions.